What is going on, everybody? My name is Davidson Baker. I am the host of this YouTube channel, a staff writer at the MMATakeover.com, and the host of the Bottom Line podcast. Thank you very much for stumbling upon this video today. If you like what you hear and you want more content like this, hit subscribe, and I'll get right to it. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor is so close. We can taste it. So close to the tune of both fighters weighing in successfully, no problems. No TV cords, no tiramisu. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor are set and official for the UFC lightweight title, and I feel great about it. So this is just a closing remark video, kind of all of the thoughts that I've gathered throughout the process of this fight being promoted. There is a video on my channel that has my opening remarks. That's around the time the fight was announced. That was also a clip from a previous podcast of mine, but I figured it was only fitting to do some closing remarks. So, first off, I want to start with this. Before I get into the nitty gritty of the fight, do you remember how Christmas Eve felt as a child? Like, I don't mean during the window of your respective life in which you may have still believed in Santa Claus young, but old enough to know he isn't real, but young enough to be on the receiving end of gifts without feeling the obligation of having to buy gifts for others. There was an aura about it, It's a sensation unlike any other traditional holiday. It's the only one that recognizes the actual day's eve, and, New Year's Eve doesn't really count. Today feels a lot like Christmas Eve, and I feel like a fucking kid on Christmas Eve today. I'm so excited. This has been a slowly but surely maturation process throughout fight week. It felt like from Monday to Wednesday, I feel like it took forever, but once the open workouts came around, it was smooth sailing from there. You had the receptions for each man at the open workouts, to the second press conference, which I'll get into, and obviously to weighing into now, and it's really sinking in, man. We've been waiting so long for this fight, and it's finally happening a little bit over 28 hours from now. So don't get me wrong, I know I'm supposed to be impartial, and I say that as a lie, to be honest with you. I really don't have to be impartial. I could choose to root for whoever I want, but I am impartial. I fell in love with the sport of mixed martial arts, unlike how I fell in love with all, other sports. For those who may not be familiar with me or listen to any other of my content that's non-MMA or combat sports related, I'm a sports junkie, I'm a sports freak, but I fell in love with MMA a little bit differently. People get wowed by the knockouts and the submissions and the highlight reels, but man, it's really all about, for me, the technical aspect of the mental game. And I feel like there's a lot of that coming to play in this fight. Being a diehard fan of the sport and having an immense like for both guys too ultimately results in me being indifferent on really whatever result could possibly play out. I feel like if you're a purist and you really don't have a say on who's who to win, I don't really count like rooting for the fighter you predict to win. Sure, like to each his own, but most MMA purists would probably be okay to whatever path the UFC would decide to go with the winner and loser of this fight. And there are also pros and cons to both situations, respectively. So, but here's my thing. While I am impartial, and like I said, I do like both guys, and I would be totally fine and happy for whoever gets that lightweight title wrapped around their waist tomorrow night. Take this into consideration. I also am a consistent and ongoing consumer of the UFC's product. If you were watching this video and have gotten this far along, I would assume you are as well. With that being said, and with my aforementioned status as kind of a purist and kind of impartial and don't really care who wins this fight, it's really difficult to ignore the sharp and utmost curiosity that I have in wondering just exactly how much bigger could Conor McGregor get if he wins. And I don't have that same feeling for Khabib. Now, the answer to that might be obvious. It might be because obviously Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather on the sidelines, Conor McGregor could definitely make the case of being the biggest star in combat sports. easily the biggest star in the history of the sport of mixed martial arts, and it's not even close. So with all of that being said, could he get bigger? Could his star shine more? Could his aura glow more radiantly? Could his shit stink less? I think the only way to find that out is if he wins. And I am curious about that. Now, as for Khabib, it's going to be really hard for Khabib to appeal to the casual fan just because, let's face it, man, the casual fans, they're going to be asking MMA fans about this fight, and they're going to ask them who they're going to take, and they're going to, try to pique their sense of unfamiliarity towards garnishing their own prediction when they don't really know what's going on. And those are the type of fans that won't get behind a guy like Khabib, and Khabib is a traditional champion. Khabib is going to fight whoever the UFC puts in front of him, as to where Conor, if he recaptures the belt, he could get creative. And he could also resume his duties as the effective emergency brake on the lightweight division. It just depends on how you prefer it. It really just goes without being said, man. I mean, everybody knows how big of a star Conor McGregor is. And like I said, while Khabib is one of the most recognizable figures in the sport to those who follow it, there's a very high percentage of people that are going to be watching this record-breaking expected pay-per-view audience. And a high percentage of those people will at some point pronounce Khabib's last name wrong. Nurmagomedov. I heard that the other day from Bomani Jones on ESPN. That was it. It's wrong, but I see where he came up with that. What I'm trying to say here is obviously Conor's star power would burn even brighter than it is now if he were to win. But think about maybe like a step further than that. Because, dude, sure, Khabib's track record isn't as stacked as maybe the Conor McGregors and the Tony Fergusons of the world. But to be 26-0 and having not lost a round with 11 of those 26 bouts coming in the UFC, what else do you have to prove, man? I think we all know how good Khabib is and how well he imposes his will. And with all of that being said, for Conor to be able to hang the first loss on an unblemished record like a 26-0, including never losing a round, who the fuck knows what Conor would do next, man? And again, that same narrative does not apply to Khabib. As it shouldn't. And by no means necessary, let me make this very clear, by no means necessary is that by any stretch of the imagination a bad thing. That's what a true champion does, man. You line up, you defend, you get a little bit of time to rest, maybe time to kick back into pre-training camp, call the UFC up and say, all right, who's next? That's Khabib. And the selfish fan in me is hoping that it might be Tony, just because we really need to see that fight. If Khabib were to win, I would obviously, I'm selfish in that regard. I would really, really, really like to see Khabib and Tony in their prime, man. I guess Khabib and Pettis would be cool too. That's an interesting matchup, but the fans need to see Khabib and Tony. I think that goes without being said. And all of that being said too, Khabib doesn't carry that same amount of unpredictability by, taking on all comers. But what else could you ask for your champion? If you can see in the title of this video too, I titled it with Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor, my closing remarks, and then I added a title to it called The Beautiful Paradox. So what exactly is a paradox, and how does that word find itself in the same title bar as a mixed martial arts fight? And how does that word depict this particular stylistic matchup? Well, the definition of paradox, according to Merriam-Webster, is one such as a person, situation, or action that is seemingly contradictory or has contradictory qualities or phases. I'll tell you right now, I have a hard time believing that you're going to find a better definition for any word in any dictionary on the planet that would sum up this fight better than that definition does. Contradictory qualities or phases. Talk about two guys that contradict each other in almost every facet of the imagination, inside and outside of the octagon. when you look at the matchup from all angles, it's the classic grappler versus striker, with Khabib having the edge on the ground, and obviously Conor is going to need to keep the fight standing as long as he can. Khabib doesn't always find home for his takedown attempts, and I don't think that should come to any sense of discrediting on the part of Khabib just because of how aggressive and relentless he is in searching for the takedown. I think it's sub 50%. I'm not looking at any stats or anything like that, but I do know in my notes that I have provided to me that Conor is very, very, very good at stuffing the takedown and keeping the fight on the feet to the tune of 73%. The key for me, though, man, is if we're talking about the fight hitting the mat, I'll tell you right now, in my opinion, the key to this fight, the number one determining factor, and I say that because I do think at some point Khabib is going to get Conor down. But the key to how this fight is going to play out is how long is Conor going to stay down? How long is Khabib going to keep him there? History shows that that narrative would favor Khabib. Khabib literally has picked people up and thrown them around an entire octagon and just held them there, man. I think Cain Velasquez said it best in that Bad Blood promo that they were doing on Fox Sports 1, where he said, once Khabib gets what he wants, it's very difficult to take it away from him. I think that quote right there speaks volumes from a guy that obviously knows the ins and outs of Khabib's game. Another contradictory aim at stats is Khabib only absorbs just over 1.5 strikes per minute. But obviously a guy like Conor is going to be throwing that left hand in bunches, and he lands just south of 6 strikes per minute. And obviously another big one that everybody's talking about, the cardio, man. Khabib's chances have consensusly been agreed upon as far as increasing towards winning the fight the longer the fight goes. And I would go as far as saying every single tick that comes off that fight clock begins to work more and more in Khabib's favor, maybe outside of the first couple minutes. But once you get in second, third, fourth round, you would have to assume that's going to favor Khabib. And Conor might have much improved cardio and might come out with a gas tank that we've never seen from him before, but Khabib has shown that he can go distances at 15 and distances at 25 and not miss a beat. And while Khabib has the much more impressive, he has the wow factor when you look at his record, man. And everything is written on paper, but not every story can be told based off what's written on paper. And while 26-0 is and having never lost a round is impressive, the more impressive resume has to go to Conor, man. Khabib has great wins inside the octagon. He beat RDA. He beat Edson Barbosa. He beat a guy like Al Iaquinta. He took down Abel Trujillo 21 times. But when you hold them up side by side, with Conor, Alvarez, Aldo, Poirier, a very young Max Holloway, Mendez, Seaver. Yeah. And in every single fight I just mentioned, probably outside of the Holloway fight, you can take or give points away to Conor for him tearing his ACL early on in that fight if you want. It's up to you. But in pretty much every fight except the Holloway fight, he won in devastating and phenomenal fashion. So another thing that's going to, kind of clash at a head is, Khabib's been active. He has been hampered with injuries in his career, but he has been active. He's fought twice in the past calendar year. And Conor's layoff will be at 693 days when he enters the cage. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, as far as the outside of the cage contradictions are concerned, man, Khabib Nurmagomedov, I think, is cool as a cucumber. He's calm, he's collected. He is exactly what he preaches in being humble. I don't know how humble he could get by attempting to make another man humble, such as Mr. Conor McGregor. But Khabib is maybe not soft-spoken, but you can tell he is the quieter pair of the two. And Conor McGregor, the brash, fiery persona that we've all come to know and love, ties right into the fact that, you know, they were throwing Conor's name around this week with Muhammad Ali. To be honest with you, I haven't given that comparison as far as fight build-up, mental warfare is concerned. I have not really given much thought as to if I agree that Conor is on the same level as Muhammad Ali. But to put it in perspective, Conor doesn't even agree that he's on the same level as Muhammad Ali in that respect. So we'll let you take that information and run with it. But the thing that Conor has used with his mental warfare in the past is like he broke almost everyone he fought before they even stepped in the cage. He broke Poirier. He broke Aldo. He broke Alvarez. I think he was kind of just toying with Mendez. And I really think he was toying with Alvarez to the point where he even accidentally got in his head so much. But Alvarez just didn't know how to return fire in terms of the trash talking. But man, he does his homework too with the Ali Abdelaziz. With the Ali Abdelaziz verbal insults towards him and bringing up a son that he allegedly abandoned or whatever. I don't really know the whole story behind that. But I definitely thought, as far as that was concerned, I thought Conor was definitely in Khabib's head during the first press conference. And if you had to take a side of who was maybe a winner, you got to give round 1 to Conor. And I think you got to give round 2 to Khabib. Last night, if you didn't catch the press conference, Khabib's there on time. Dana's there on time. You think I'm going to say Conor McGregor's there on time? Fuck no. Folk no. Folk nah? Folk no. Yeah, that's better. Khabib had enough, man. He decided that it was unprofessional. He was visibly upset. And at first, when I watched him kind of display the body language that he had, it kind of threw up some red flags for me. But then when I thought about it a little bit longer, I thought, actually, this is probably a win for Khabib, because if Conor's going to get in his head anymore, certainly can't be while Khabib's out of the room. And maybe he's not in Khabib's head. I thought it appeared that way in the first press conference, but again, man, a Dagestani-bred mental fortitude where the only way to save yourself is staying in the gym. Oh, I cannot wait for this, man. Cannot wait. My last couple of thoughts, man. I mean, I thought the overall promotion, man, if the UFC promoted every single pay-per-view like they promote this, which they obviously won't for obvious reasons, it's been top-notch. I'm looking up, randomly I got the itch to look up NFL Films music on YouTube. And guess what's sitting there right there in the ad box, top of the screen? It's fucking Khabib pointing at me. It's an ad for the fight. Now it's to the point where I try to pull up some YouTube videos that aren't even related to sports and my advertisement. And maybe that's because it's curating my content to tailor, what I would watch. Maybe. I don't really know about any of that. However, I didn't see any of that for 228. I didn't see any of that for 227. I even thought 226 was a little bit underpromoted. However, Conor McGregor's in the house. You got to bring the big guns. And I think they did just that. As far as the pay-per-view buy rate is concerned, I was not convinced at first that this fight was going to break the record. But if I am going to make a prediction, I think it's going to end up breaking the record. Anybody that's talking about these, these numbers that the people are throwing out, like 2.5 million, 3 million, let me promise you something right now. If you are expecting this card to do 2.5 million buys, you're lying to yourself. And you're allowing Dana White to lie to you. This card's not going to do 2.5 million. I think the UFC one day will be capable of having the perfect main event to do 2.5 million buys. I just don't think it's this one. I think to do a number like 2.5 million buys, there's got to be there's got to be two dance partners that were perfect from the moment they saw each other across the dance floor. Two people that will be able to feed off of each other. think Floyd and Conor is a bad example, but then again, Floyd praised Conor an endless amount of times for helping carry the load. And maybe if you get that perfect main event one day where two guys both equally carry the load and all the dominoes fall and everything comes right into place, maybe. I do not think it's going to happen this weekend, though. I do think they break the record, though. I think it's going to do in the neighborhood between 1.9 and 2.1. And as far as my prediction for the fight, I was on the fence for a while, back and forth and back and forth. But here's the overall, when I make predictions on fights that are as big as these, I try to find myself pointing towards a direction that, how am I trying to word this? I try to give myself the benefit of the doubt as far as context clues in real life data that I have stored. What does that mean? That means from all of the information stored in my mind and all of the logged video time and memories and clips and knowledge that I have gathered about both of these guys and all of their fights and who did what right and who could have done what a little bit better. I always try to look for one thing that stands out, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Or maybe not even a bad thing, but something that stylistically could play into one of the two fighters' hands. What I ended up coming upon is that when I watch Khabib, sometimes it feels like I'm trying to word this correctly too. Sometimes when I watch Khabib, and when I have gone back and taken a look at a couple of pivotal rounds in his UFC tenure, is it just me, or does it look like sometimes with his aggressive, like I said, his aggressive relentlessness, to be aggressive and relentless in the same sentence, I mean, you're looking for one thing. And you're repeatedly looking for that same thing. It's called muscle memory. When your body memorizes a notion or an action, or, I don't feel like I need to give you the definition, but whenever your body picks up on something that has been repeated over and over again, it's called muscle memory. Sometimes I feel like Khabib's instincts in using his grappling acumen to work to his advantage inside of the octagon looks like, while he obviously is dominating, it all looks the same. Muscle memory. All of that being said, I've seen way too many times Khabib charge in, chin high. If he tries to engage in that clinch and has to duck out of it, his head is right there in perfect southpaw left-hand target range. I think Khabib might even win the first round of this fight. Like I said earlier, if I had to bet yes or no on whether Khabib will take Conor down or not, I'd probably bet yes at some point. But you can only make so many mistakes against Conor McGregor until he makes you pay for it. And if Khabib makes one split-second mistake, he's going to fall. And I think that will happen in the second round. And I predict Conor McGregor will be the new, and once again, UFC lightweight champion of the world.